Good afternoon and welcome to our May 10th Rotary Club of Columbus meeting. We call our meeting to order. If you would join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, with liberty and justice for all. At this point, I'd like to call on Reggie, if you would come and give us invocation according to your faith tradition.
All right. Let us go to the Lord in prayer. Oh, dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this club, Lord. We thank you for each and every member in a special way, dear Heavenly Father. Be with them, dear Lord. Lord, continue to let us do the things in this community that we need to, Lord. And when we do those things, Lord, we know that it is pleasing to you, dear Heavenly Father. Oh, Lord, we ask that you bless this food that we are receiving. Let it be nourishment and strength for our body. This I do pray in thy Son, Jesus' name. Amen. Please remember your cans.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You may be seated. At this point, if we can give our attention, Ron Williams is going to come and give us the news for today.
Thank you, President Cedric. Good afternoon. Here are today's headlines. Solar energy is the cheapest and most accessible form of energy. Now it promises to be more efficient than ever. Scientists from a Chinese solar technology company have developed a new type of solar cell that could be a game changer in the world's transition toward renewable energy. The innovative technology can transfer electricity with far less resistance and results in a higher power conversion efficiency than any other type of solar cell made from crystalline silicon. Researchers developed this new technology on standard industry-grade silicon wafers, making the technology almost immediately applicable in the production of solar panels. In state news, last Friday, Governor Kemp signed Georgia's FY24 state budget, which includes $32.4 billion in state funds and $55.9 billion overall, including federal and other funds. This budget includes full college tuition for all Hope Scholarship recipients earning a B average or above. In local news, tomorrow morning at Doughboy Stadium on our local military installation, Fort Benning will officially be renamed Fort Moore in honor of Lieutenant General Harold Moore and his wife, Julia Moore. And finally, on this day in history, in 1869, the presidents of the Union Pacific and Central Pacific Railroads met in Promontory, Utah, to drive a ceremonial last spike into a rail line that connected their respective railroads. Ultimately, this made transcontinental railroad possible for the first time in U.S. history. No longer would western-bound travelers need to take the long and dangerous journey by wagon train. Your weather forecast: today will be sunny with a high of 89 and a low of 68. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. We'll call on Britt, if you will, introduce our visiting Rotarians and guests today.
Always wonderful to have the opportunity to have visitors at a meeting. The more lives we touch, the more in the community we can help. So have a couple of good visitors today. Mr. Jimmy Elder brought Chuck Williams. Chuck's new to our community, I think, with WRBL. He might have been here a little while. I think I got that mixed up. Ms. Debbie Caballero brought Alex Haig. Alex is from Denver, but he's an audit manager with Richie May, a national accounting audit firm. But if you raise your hands up, we'll be glad to give you a warm welcome. Thank you very much.
To our visitors and guests, we just want to re-welcome you and thank you for being with us today. And hope that our day's lunch and program will be something of interest to you. It's always great when we can introduce new members to our club. So at this point, we'd like to call on Jimmy Elder and Ben Moser, if you would come and introduce our newest Rotarians.
Good afternoon, everyone. I have the pleasure today of introducing new member Pat Frey. You all know Pat recently as our Dan Reed Award winner. She's just an amazing person. I do have her bio here, and I'll read some of the highlights of that. Pat has committed most of her life to service of our community through her professional career and her volunteerism. Pat worked as a manager of public housing before her career at Columbus Regional. In 2016, Pat came to work as executive director for Home for Good, the alliance to end homelessness here in the Chattahoochee Valley. Since then, she has coordinated the continuum of care, spearheaded further implementation of the collective database system, HMIS, and cultivated relationships in order to help unite the efforts of many programs and services in the Valley. To that end, Pat has helped facilitate the successful housing of hundreds of members of our community. Her passion for addressing the underlying problem at hand, her compassion for those in need, and ability to forge relationships have made Pat a vital part of Home for Good, United Way, and the Chattahoochee Valley. When she's not working in the community, Pat enjoys spending time at home with her 3 children and spoiling her 5 grandchildren. Pat's one of my great friends, one of my personal heroes, just an amazing, amazing person who cared so passionately about this community. And it's our pleasure today to welcome her to the Downtown Rotary Club. Here you go, Pat. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm truly honored to be standing here after just the amazing work that's done in Rotary and by each individual here. There's not a person here who hasn't touched countless lives in your professional and your personal lives, and it's not something we turn off or turn on. You know, Debbie, I see over at Jobs for Life over at Asbury and Oakland Park, and Ish and the work he's done with the Baker alumni and everything else, Baker High School, just to let you know, class of '85. So just thank you all. I'm honored to be here and to be able to work with such great people. Thank you.
Okay. I know the question is going to be asked, so let me go ahead and tell you. Somebody will ask, no, a lot of you have already asked, why are you introducing Chuck Williams as a new member? The reason is because somebody had to do it. And I have known Chuck. Chuck's been a good friend for a long, long time. All the time I've been here. He was a reporter with the Ledger Inquirer for 30 years. With a distinguished career there. And most of you got to know him, and some of you may not have wanted to know him at that particular moment. It just kind of depends. But Chuck has done a marvelous job. And then he transitioned from there to WRBL. And there, Chuck carried an opportunity for journalism on a little bit different level to the television sector, and has done a wonderful job with that. Chuck, as I said, has been a good friend of mine. We tease a lot. And sometimes we've agreed on things, and sometimes we've disagreed on things. But the one thing that I know and have never doubted at all is first his friendship, and secondly his love for this community. And I want you to welcome with me someone who came to us from Eufaula, Alabama, who's now a part of our lives here and is our newest Rotarian, Chuck Williams.
Jimmy, somebody had to do it. Thank you for being the one. You know, I look around this room, there's so many people that I interact with on a regular basis and so many people that I truly respect. And it's an honor to go in with Pat Frey because I've covered Pat's organization for years and during her tenure, and there's nobody in this community I respect more for the work they do in Columbus to help the least among us. Thank y'all for inviting me in. I look forward to this. I have great respect for this organization. My brother was the president of the Rotary Club back in Eufaula before he passed, and my wife used to be a member here, so I fully understand. I'm coming into this eyes wide open, and I can't wait to see it from the inside rather than looking at it from the outside. Thank y'all. I appreciate it very much.
I'll give Chuck his pin, both the badge and the pin. So now you're officially ours, okay? It's good to see you.
So, Pat, thank you for allowing us to have an effect on you and you becoming a member of the club. And Jimmy, thank you for having an effect on Chuck and him becoming a member of the club. Let's give them a hand again for being with us. And we look forward to working with you all. At this point, we call on Ian. If Ian and Laurie would come and introduce us to our latest Will Watt fellow.
President Cedric, fellow Rotarians, it's always a great day for the Georgia Rotary Student Program and the Rotary Club of Columbus when we get to present a Will Watt Fellowship to one of our members. Represents a contribution of $1,000 to the GRSP Foundation, which pays for now about 1/3 of the entire cost of sponsoring great students like Laurie to participate in this program. So Dr. Jim Cross is our latest Will Watt Fellow, and Laurie will make the presentation. Just give it to her. And you just take it, and then we line up for a photo walk.
Let's give Dr. Cross a hand. Just a few announcements. Our breakfast mix will now be on May 26th, and the presenter will actually be President-elect Tom Weinig. I'm going to have this guy to stand because he's nearing front row. You stand, sir? President-elect Tom will actually be doing the breakfast mix. And then back on the back table, we're nearing Career Day, so there's a sign-up sheet at the back table. If you would be so kind as to select the date on there, and of course put your career and your profession, and of course your name and information there. Another thing I just wanted to call your attention to, and it was just such impressive to me, and I just want to share this with you. Last week when we left the meeting here, there's a group out of here that stopped by a coffee shop, and I just so happened to stop by and speak with them. And about the time that I stopped by the coffee shop, there was a gentleman standing outside the coffee shop, just collapsed. And everyone around was just wondering kind of like what to do, but one of our own Rotarians, and realistically Bella, his service dog, swung into action. And I've never seen such as that. And I just wanted to thank Jay O'Neill for the position that he took last Wednesday, prospectively saving a person's life, and what Bella did. And I know you all see Jay come in and you see him with the service dog, but I just wanted to thank him for what he did last week. If y'all would be so kind to him. At this point, I'd like to call on Phil if you would come and introduce our program today, and we want to make sure that we give adequate time for our speaker. Phil, if you would come.
So I have the great pleasure of introducing Neil Richardson. I know many of you know him better than I do. He's originally from Miami, and he likes to call Columbus his promised land. He is most proud of his 3 boys, and I don't know if there's anyone that I know that has invested more of their life into helping others, especially others that many have just written off. So, Neil Richardson.
President Cedric, members, June 4th, 2007, I called my ex-wife on the phone and I said, I think I'm dying. If I could make it to your house, could you get me to the hospital? I have an ex-wife, honestly, because I spent 30 years as an active cocaine addict. And she finally got smart and threw my fanny out the door. I got to her house. We lived close enough so that we could be parents. That was a good thing. Phil mentioned I got 3 sons. I want to brag real fast about them. They're great, and they're mine, and they're making grands now. I like that part too. It turns out I had something known as necrotizing fasciitis. I collapsed in the parking lot at the hospital. That's nicknamed the flesh-eating disease. That was June the 4th. I came out of the coma on July 27th of that year. Best 8 weeks sleep I've ever had. And so everything I'm fixing to tell you, I only got briefed on after the fact. But 5% of the people that get this live. Guess which group I'm in. It took about a year to rehab. And a dear friend of mine named Rob Dahl, some of you will remember from this community, came up. I brought one of my sons up, who's an aerospace engineer. He wanted a Z car. And Rob cut him a deal, and we drove up here, bought the car, and then took him to Washington, D.C. Anyway, while I was here, Rob said, so I hear you can't work because you can't go to work every day. And I went, yeah, that's kind of a problem. How are you going to handle that? And I said, I'm still praying about it. And he said, well, if you come up here, you can sell cars. Now, you have to understand something. I used to work in politics. I ran campaigns for a living. On the public opinion polls, politicians are second to last. Car salesmen. So I said, you want me to move to Columbus, Georgia, and take the plunge? I came up here and I sold some cars. Thank God people actually bought one. So it worked out pretty good, except I met Wayne Anthony and I got to talking. And then Jimmy and I started talking, and we made a decision that we were going to try to pitch a jail ministry for this community. And Wayne made me do homework. I came back with the homework. Jimmy made me go meet with some of the other pastors in town, and we birthed the Columbus Jail Ministry, Muskogee County Jail. I was the first chaplain. It was pretty cool. We did some amazing things there. I have the honor of saying that I retired almost 2 years ago from the jail, and that's just because as God continued to grow SafeHouse Ministries, I just wasn't capable of doing 2 full-time jobs. But we still had that commitment to dealing with the ex-offender, but we started to realize there's a lot of co-occurring activity in this field. You know, there are people who are homeless that get incarcerated. There are people who are drug and addict or alcoholic problems that are getting incarcerated. As a matter of fact, just for information purposes, 88% of the people that are incarcerated in this country are there because of drinking and drugging. Flat out fact. If we can have an impact on substance abuse in our community, we could close the jail and have 1 floor for folks to come in and out of. And that's really got to be the goal. I told you I was a drug addict at the beginning of this because I want you to understand as God continued to grow this ministry, we made a commitment to serve people who are affected by substance abuse. So ex-offenders, homeless people, and people that we hear about from families in our very community. And we had to make a couple of commitments. We were going to create a drug program that was capable, we're a state licensed intensive outpatient drug program known as Tomorrow's Hope, which is also certified and accredited by CARF, which is the official agency that does this work. We would be the only free substance abuse program with those credentials in the southeastern United States that I'm aware of. And we have one extra. We don't do a wait list. Every time I would get near the bottom, I would call and talk to a couple of drug places and ask them if they had any seats, and they said, about 2 weeks. I don't know what you know about substance abuse, but people don't sit around and watch TV for 2 weeks that need help. And so we made a commitment that when we started Tomorrow's Hope, which is, I think, one of the key ingredients of this ministry today, that there would never be a wait list. If somebody called up and said, I need help, we would take them in right now. As only God can do up until, let's say, COVID. Pre-COVID, our ministry had built itself up into a position where it had 59 homeless beds. It had 25 for women and children and 59 for men. We had the substance abuse program, and we had already moved into Rose Hill United Methodist Church, and that became known as the Safe House. We still serve about 800 to 820 unique individuals each month at the Safe House. We provide a free breakfast, a free lunch, 365 days a year. We've got clothing. I'm excited about this. We have a workforce center, which now, partnering with Goodwill and the International Electrical Contractors, that we were able to provide free 2 weeks worth of apprenticeship prep classes. The IEC actually helped us create the curriculum, and we provided instructors from area electrical companies. And so now a guy or a gal can come into this class. They've already had 3 of them. 30 people got trained. 26 of them got hired by local electric companies. And because of Goodwill's participation, every employer that hired one of our graduates got $750 gift card for Home Depot so they could go buy all the brand new tools that an electrician should have. We've now done that in HVAC, and we've also done that in plumbing. We're going to do welding later this summer. We're trying to create an opportunity to not just get employed, but to have a job that buys a house and raises a family. We're kind of wrapping up right now in a capital campaign called Jobs, Homes, and Hope, because we think that's the ticket out. We think if somebody's homeless, if somebody's suffering addiction, if somebody's trying to figure out how to cope with life post-incarceration, That the only way they're going to be able to pull that off is if they can stand up on their own 2 feet, get the self-respect that they need and the self-worth that they deserve, and you get that with a paycheck. And we as a community get benefits because we have openings. We need people to go to work. I'm going to brag about something here right now. That Workforce Center has gotten us into a position that 99% of the people that live in our shelters have a job. Draw a paycheck. 75% of those are making over $10 an hour, so well above the poverty line. And we actually take folks, this was a funny conversation. John Anchor and I from Anchor Pack were sitting around one day, and he was whining about the fact, he's not here, I can get away with that, but he was whining about the fact that the old approach wasn't working. The HR guy was sitting at an empty desk with nobody in his chair. And I said, what are you going to do different? Because I said, obviously, if the old model doesn't work, we need a new model. I said, how about I take a van, fill it up with people that want to go to work and bring them to one of your places. You give them a tour, make them want to come to work for you, and then have your HR people there, and we'll make a second trip and pick up anybody that's going to do the paperwork. I just took a tour with another friend of John's and mine, and we went through one of his warehouses, and in that time, I ran into 5 of his employees. One had been there for 3 years. One has been there the least for 13 months. All 5 of them graduates of our substance abuse program. All 5 of them that used to live in our shelters. 3 of the 5 own a home. All 5 have a car. And you might not find this funny, but I got a kick out of it. As we were talking about doing the tours, we were getting ready to leave. One of those employees ran up, tapped me on the shoulder and said, I got the $200. Everybody was looking at me like, what am I selling? A group of us that are in recovery a few years ago decided that if we do life right, we should have a little disposable income, right? And we decided that we were going to start doing something with that, and so we created something called Recovery Adventures. Our first adventure, 12 of us went to Atlanta and jumped out of an airplane. Whoo, was that fun. I liked it so much I was still jumping. But it's $200 to take the first tandem jump. And this girl, Amber, was running up to tell me that she saved $200 so that she can jump out of a plane because we're all going again in June. And I think that's kind of what put the icing on the cake was she's so happy with her life right now, owns a house, has her children back, performing, working for this company for 3+ years, has a car of her own and a life of her own, and she's got $200. She wants to jump out of an airplane and celebrate. That's what we get to do. You know, we do job training and we do job interviewing at the SafeHouse, even with our homeless clientele that come by to get a meal from us. We actually can give them the clothing they need for the first day on the job. We've got temporary agencies that are coming and interviewing them to see if we can't find them a way to quit being homeless. Maybe, I don't know, work. I think work is magic. I think having a place to live where I get to decide what goes on the shelf and what time I turn the TV off gives me the hope to have a real life. I think some of the stuff that I find exciting. Pre-COVID, I told you we had 59 beds. Right now, as we finish up this capital campaign we're involved with, we have 213 beds for homeless people in Columbus, Georgia. We house 36 mental health homeless people who would be on the streets, and we put them with a case manager, and we put them with another roommate so they can be a little accountability. And then we're slowly starting to get them ready to mainstream, if you will, into their own place. We got a lot of cool things that's happening there. We just moved into, Britt was up here, he's my landlord, thank you for the price. We have a 104-bed men's shelter in the old Cobus personal care home. And with a 104-bed then, we were able to close our women's shelter, move them over to the old men's shelter, and so now we have beds for 54 women and children. Currently, we have 12 children and 36 women. And then we took the old apartment that used to be the apartment building and converted it back into apartments, and we can house up to 5 homeless families at a time. So 213 people have a free place to sleep if they need to. We just have a little accountability thing that we want to do. All we ask is you look for work, you get a job, and you save money. That's a pretty simple concept, right? If you do those 3 things, let me tell you what happens. Before we started doing case management and started really working a lot with the United Way and the Home for Good office, we averaged 50% of the people that slept in one of our shelters moved into permanent housing. Since we started, and I love Pat, because we get to work with her. It used to be for a while we had to meet once a week so that she could literally drill into us. Anybody that knows Pat knows what I'm talking about. That we could learn how to be case managers, and we could learn how to help somebody identify barriers and then move into permanent housing. So now, 68% of the people that spend one night with us will move into permanent housing in a place of their own where they get to turn off the TV when they dadgum want to. And then we have to deal with the substance abuse issues. And I think 130 plus people will go through this program of ours each and every year. We allow people to continue to work while they're in treatment so that they can still be providers. They can still have a place and stand up and be proud of themselves. You know, I want to brag about something and I'm going to thank Ben and the United Way, because about 6-7 years ago, United Way made a commitment that we as agencies were going to stop the stovepipe nonsense. And we were going to start cooperating and working together. And by partnering, we could accomplish instead of duplicate. We could focus together. They mentioned even when she got announced as a member, this computer system that gives us all the ability to see what's happening over here and over here so that I can help and follow the help path that's already been created. But I want to list a few agencies and partnerships because I think that's the magic that only happens in a place as cool as Columbus, Georgia. We partner with United Way because we're an agency. We partner with Home for Good and 211 so that we can make sure that every person that we touch in this community has access to services and access to success. We partner with Goodwill. I mentioned already the apprenticeship training programs that we do with them, plus a construction readiness program based in Atlanta that they and us brought here to this community. Mercy Med and Valley Healthcare ensure that our clients have access to quality health care. We partner with New Horizons and American Works to make sure that our clients have access to really good mental health programming. We partner with the Plummer Home in order to provide housing and hope for returning veterans that we're finding on our streets. I mean, doesn't anybody deserve a second chance more than a returning veteran? But it's sad to think that a community could have a homeless veteran, even one. But working with the Plummer Home, we've been able to provide them part of our facility to make sure that once they do an intake with a vet, that they then can move them into our facility and make room for more intakes at their smaller facility. And so we're partnering on that. I know everybody's supposed to go eat food with Mac Plummer next week sometime. I'll encourage that. We partnered with the Columbus Baptist Association and with Pat Fry and Home for Good, and we closed the homeless sex offender camp in Columbus, Georgia, which looked worse than a third world slum until that happened. I'll brag on this. The 8 men that we helped get out of that camp all have jobs, all have cars, all but one live on their own, and that's because he's an employee, and we won't let him leave because he does good with our people. Valley Rescue, Mike Gaiman, I love you. Mike and I got together and we were talking one day about how can we partner and what can we do to make this community more successful. And Mike says, listen, Nashville scares me. What are we going to do in our churches and in our agencies about active shooter and that kind of problem? And so we kicked it around a little bit and talked to Martha Ann. And Martha Ann talked to Chester over at the Homeland Security and Emergency Office. And last week we put on a free active shooter training program at Columbus Tech for about 48 people that came from churches and area agencies just to try to be helpful. You know, I guess if I was going to try to race through everything we do, I just got to tell you this. We believe in the one person at a time formula. We believe in a big-hearted community of Columbus, Georgia. And I'm just going to end with, tell you a little bit about Lori. Lori's one of my faves. I met Lori at 42 years of age when I was chaplain in the jail. She'd become a heroin addict in her 40s, blown off a good job, blown off a family, and was living on the street shooting dope. Several trips in and out of the jail. Her mother called me one day and said, do not let her out. I said, well, we probably have a constitutional problem with that question. She said, well, then don't let her come back to my house. What pain. How sad. You know, Lori said that she was ready to make some changes. We put her in the substance abuse program that we had in the jail at the time. And then I took Lori and we brought her into our women's shelter, and we helped Lori find a job. And we helped Lori, struggling with her addiction, find some recovery. And then Lori got a job. And Lori saved enough money. Lori moved into her own place. And then her mom started letting her join them on the same pew at church every Sunday. And after a few months, Mom said, why don't you come home for lunch after church? And she did that for a while, and then they said, maybe you'd like to come home. And so Lori moved home, and within a year, her mom got really sick, and Lori was able to be a caretaker and held her hand as she passed. I was telling this story in a place. Actually, it was a city office, and doing a United Way gig, and talking about why we need to be active in our community. And this one girl was sitting there as I was sharing Lori's story, and she's sitting in the middle, and I was watching her. She's just bawling her eyes out. And listen, I've never had that effect on somebody. I was going, this is a good day. Huh? But when the show was over, this girl came up to me, and she said, Lori's my mom. She said, nobody ever bragged about Lori. Thank you. There's still Loris out there. You know, we're real close to being able to finish this capital campaign, and we moved in, and we're fixing it as we live there. We've got 208 people a night living in our shelter. We're feeding 125 lunch, 80 some odd for breakfast every day. We're collecting and giving out clothes and coffee and love. But when it's all said and done, the accountability that the person gets to have in their own recovery, in their own ending of their homelessness, means that more Loris get to go home and have supper. And y'all are part of that, because this is such a loving and wonderful community. So God bless you, and God bless yours, and thank you.
Jim, before you sit, we may have some questions. I want to take any questions that anyone has. You would? No questions? Okay, right here.
Neil, as we come across circumstances, maybe we interact with somebody on the street randomly, maybe we have family members or acquaintances that may need your services, or have somebody in their household that needs your services. What would be the best way to get them connected with you guys?
Step one, call 211. That's the first thing. Get an intake, get in the system, and make everybody aware that that person exists. You can also call the SafeHouse. You know, if it's a substance abuse issue in your family, you know, give us a call and we can get an assessment and a counselor out with them immediately. But I always tell everybody, call 211 first. That way every agency has access to that person immediately. Here's the guy in the back.
Jay, all the way in the back.
Yeah. So let me answer that a little bit differently. 8 years ago, when Home for Good was being birthed at the United Way offices, we probably had 500 to 600 homeless people in our community. And at that time, I think the number was somewhere in the 90s as far as unsheltered people on our streets. Today, we had a 19% increase between 22 and 23, so there's 69 unsheltered people on our streets. Do we have more sheltered homeless? Yes. Did we see an uptick in homelessness directly as a result of the pandemic and the economy right afterwards? Yes. Are we still knocking it out? In 2023, so the first 4 months of this year, we alone in the partnership that we have with United Way on a grant from the state of Georgia, housed 74 people, homeless families or men and women, into permanent housing so far this year. So did we take a hit as a result of the economy and pandemic? Yes. Have we already started getting the balls rolling to get those numbers back down? Yes. The good news is we have the shelter beds, because we still have about 69 people that are on our streets that we're trying to deal with almost in an emergency basis to see what we can do until we can get them into a place. That's our challenge right now.
Neil, of course you need money, but aside from money, what else does your ministry need?
More? So we go through 500 cups of coffee a day at our day center. We probably go through 30 rolls of toilet paper a day. I mean, all the way down to coffee, toilet paper, sugar, clothing. We also need people to help us. You know, it's easier to get folks from a community or from a church or an organization to help us prepare and serve a meal and save some of God's money and not have to hire bunches and bunches of more people. So volunteerism, supplies, and that first thing you said.
Neil, one of the things when you and I started speaking a couple of years ago was the need in the community to not break up the immediate family. And you spoke to that a moment ago, being able to offer that service now. Could you that really touched my heartstrings, if you could touch on that a little bit. Thank you.
Up until a year ago, when we reconditioned the Trinity House to serve homeless families, we would break up a family. We would put the woman and child in one facility and the man in the other. And so those 5 apartments have given us the opportunity to keep a family together. And I think, how do you find your self-worth when you can't even see your family? But Britt, that happened because of the partnership that we pulled off to get Cobus turned into that men's shelter that opened up that other building. Yes, ma'am.
So what's next? What's the next challenge you want to try to tackle?
You know, my board of directors will tell you that they would like us to kind of hold the bridle a little bit, but I think as a community, and we're going to at least be noisy on the subject, is more mental health, especially at the street level, is being able to provide more services. And I think that's much of the 69 that's left, that's where we are. So meds, support, intensive case management, I think that's probably the direction that we need to go as a community.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Neil, for sharing. I know a few years ago I attended a meeting where SafeHouse Ministries desired to occupy a church in a certain area of town, and there was some resistance because of the population in which the ministry serves. How is the community receiving the ministry in this season?
You know, in every community, you've got the not in my neighborhood group. I mean, and sometimes you can understand that. Why can't it be someplace else? But as a matter of fact, this Friday is this month's meeting. The neighbors that surround the Safe House, we meet once a month to talk about how we can improve the relationship, how we can provide them a little bit more security, what burden can we help carry into keeping the neighborhood clean and being partners in the neighborhood. And I think that's going a long way into allowing us to be a neighbor. Y'all are wonderful. God bless you and yours.
Neil, not only thank you for your service to our community, but thank you for your passion and your drive for our community. As a token of our appreciation for you visiting with us today, you can stay seated. We're going to actually place a book in the local library, the Chattanooga Valley Library, with your name and grafted on it. But we really appreciate you being here with us today. Please, let's give him a hand again. I think maybe she still has the microphone. Laurie, where are you? Can we please hear from you? We haven't heard from you in like a couple of weeks. This is our GRSP student.
You didn't hear from me last week, but I had a lot to say about the district conference.
Okay?
But I learned that what happened at the district conference stayed at the district conference. That's what they told me. So this week is a bit sad. We're saying goodbye to everyone, so we're crying a lot. I'm actually moving out of my dorm later today, and I'm in my final as well. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you so much. Just give her a hand. It's really been a pleasure to have you as a student this year and to be in the club and to be at district conference and just to see you grow and develop as a young woman as you have. It's great to have gotten to know you and glad that you're with us today. Thank you so much. Next week's program will actually be Bob Hope. And just a reminder, today's program will be both on our Facebook and YouTube page. At this point, I'd like to call on Reggie if you would come back up. If you all would stand with me as Reggie gives us our four-way test.
Okay. The four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you so much. With no further business, we stand adjourned.